Librarian friends, I'd love to ask you, what is your favorite thing about being a librarian? What sparks joy for you? What is it that makes you get up in the morning, drive to your job, and teach those students in the school library all day long? I feel like it's important to take time to reflect on this because what brings you joy about being a librarian can also be the reason why you start library centers. We want to connect what you do with library centers to your favorite thing about being a librarian. For example, some people love the technology aspect of being a librarian. They love to help students learn technology skills and learn how to communicate through that media. And that comes through in the library centers that they choose. Other librarians are really excited about reading and books, and they believe that is their primary focus. And so their library centers are really going to focus on literacy instructions. So I want you to think for a minute about what your favorite thing is about being a librarian. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why you might want to start library centers.
So if you have your note-taking guide, you can take that out and write down your own answers to this question. And if you'd like, you can share them in the comments below this video.
So let's talk about a few reasons why we think you'd love to start library centers.
One good reason is that have you ever seen this face before, especially after book exchange? So students have finished checking out their books, they have their library books in hand, or maybe they didn't get library books that day, and they ask you, well, now what do I do? I'm bored. What do I do now? And so this is one reason, and a very good reason, to start doing library centers. Many librarians, of course, say, well, take your library books and go sit down and read in the story corner, or have a seat at your table and read something, which is great. We want students to read. But we also know that not every student wants to read quietly and independently. Some students maybe just have a lot of energy that day. Maybe they've been sitting a lot in their classroom, and so they've just got some wiggles. And so library centers can provide one way for students to be more physically active during your library class.
Do you have an administrator on your campus who doesn't really know what you do? Who maybe thinks all you do is check books in and check books out? Maybe even thinks you just sit around and read during the day? I think that's common to a lot of school librarians. Principals don't really get trained on the job of the school librarian, so they don't know what we do. And when they see learning taking place in your library, they have this expression on their face. Wow, your library looks like a classroom. Yes, the library is the largest and best equipped classroom on the campus. And when you have students involved in active learning, when you have student work displayed all over the library, then whoever walks through, which I have had principal, superintendent, school board members, video crews from the district, PTA president, anybody who walks through the library can see actively engaged students, and they can see student work on display and realize this is a room where teaching happens and learning.
Another really great reason why to try library centers is that it can provide students with more choices in their learning. And we know from research that when students have more choice, that increases their engagement in that learning. So sometimes in their classroom, students certainly don't have much choice about what they are learning, but in some classrooms, they may not even have a choice in how they are learning. And so library centers provides one way to differentiate your instruction in a manageable and sustainable way. And it makes students' learning more personalized because the student is choosing an activity or a center that fits their learning style or their ability level, or maybe just the mood that they're feeling that day.
Also, another reason to start library centers is just to make the library the most fun, happy place in your school. One of the great parts of being an educator is that you get to create the environment in your classroom. What environment do you choose? I always wanted students to be smiling as they walked into the library, wondering what they could find and what they were going to be learning about. One of the things I did was have live animal library centers. So I might have a snake, a frog, a turtle, a tarantula, all kinds of different animals that we would have in the library for students to observe. Because for a lot of students, that would be the only chance they have to get up close to a live animal. So I would have the live animal in a cage. Of course, there would be water, and then there would be a big pink sign that said, do not touch the chicks, do not touch the turtle, do not touch the snake, because students, many of them just want to stick their finger right between the bars of that cage and poke and prod at that live animal. So what I did on April Fool's Day is I put an empty cage out with a sign that said, do not touch the snake. And this I did for my upper elementary students. But those fifth graders, all morning they had been driving their teacher crazy with April Fool's pranks. But when they came into the library, they completely forgot it was April Fool's Day and started asking, where's the snake? I don't see the snake. And I said, what? I thought the snake was in the cage. And then they started looking under the bookshelves, under the circulation desk. Where could the snake be? Where could the snake have escaped to? So it just made for a fun day in the library. And that was possible because I already had centers. They knew to expect, look at this table because something fun is going to be happening there. And I think that's a valid reason for why to start library centers, more joy.
Also, I will say for anyone who is as squeamish about live animals as me, there's plenty of ways to do it without something that crawls or slithers. I had ladybugs in the library, and that was my limit. But the sign of do not touch or do not take the lid off is still very important. Another reason why to try out library centers is that it's going to naturally and very easily develop problem-solving skills for students. When students are working together on an activity, it's not always going to go well. Like, the cup tower will fall down. It will crash to the ground. It'll make a loud noise. And students will sometimes get frustrated. And it's okay, of course, to let them struggle a little. It's okay to let it fail and say, okay, what can we do next? Well, what can we try differently next time? And also to not make a big deal that it fell. Oh, the cup tower fell down. Okay. And when a student gets frustrated, as they will, and they'll say, I can't do this, or this isn't working, and I can't do anything else. I can't fix it. I don't know what to do. Not only will the students in the class, everyone else say, yes, you can. Hey, let's try it again. But you as the librarian can model that and say, well, you maybe don't know what to try differently yet, but let's think of some ways that we could do this differently next time. And hey, it's no big deal that it made a big loud noise and it clattered to the floor. Like, to have that be a welcoming and open space where it's okay to make mistakes.
We know that for our students, the jobs, the careers that they will have when they grow up will be all about collaboration. They will need to be able to work with others. In fact, when our district librarians were able to go on a tour of Google offices, and we asked them what skill did we need to teach our students in order to prepare them for careers at places like Google, they told us, please teach your students how to get along with others, because we need people to collaborate, and so many really bright young workers cannot get along with others. So library centers just provide a natural way for students to work together toward a common goal And that's something that we would love for them to learn well in elementary school so that they'll be able to continue that into their secondary education and then into their careers.
And along those same lines, library centers can help students to practice and build their social emotional skills. And so, whether or not your school has school counselors, they are probably overloaded and overworked. Providing an opportunity for students to practice something that perhaps the counselor talked to their class about, but perhaps not. Gives students a chance to work on teams, work with each other, practice conflict resolution when things don't go wrong. And so in this picture, this is actually a family literacy night where parents were encouraged to come in and do an activity with their children at school. Not only is the parent and the family building a stronger relationship together, but you can do the same activity in a school, in a library classroom setting, and have students working together towards that common goal.
And one of my goals, I often had library centers as part of teacher orientation or open house or different parent nights that we would have on campus. One of my big goals was to get the parents to set down their phone and talk to their child. I'm not sure if this is your observation as well, but so often I would see parents pick up children from school with the phone in one hand and holding the child with the other. And that really makes me sad. So I wanted to provide opportunities for parents and children to work on projects together where they were really communicating and having some good quality time together.
And what a great advocacy piece that would be for your library too, to have an evening parent event, have all of that happening in the library. Mm-hmm. And so parents are connecting the library with those positive experiences.
Exactly. Let's talk about some of the benefits. We talked about some of the reasons why you would want to start library centers. Let's talk about some of the benefits that you'll see once you implement library centers in your school library. One thing that I noticed pretty quickly once I had most of the class engaged in library centers is that I suddenly noticed those quiet students who needed help, but they were never going to pester me for help. If you're busy chasing students running laps around your bookshelves, you don't even see the quiet ones who are searching for a book. But once those energetic students are involved in a library center and fully engaged, then you have time to look around and notice those quiet students who couldn't find the book they really wanted, or are having trouble searching and figuring out the layout of the library. Once you have students fully engaged, then you can find the students who need help but won't ask for it. Another benefit is that library centers give you the opportunity to assess student learning. So this picture shows a time when our district had a goal of helping students learn how to navigate ebooks. This was a few years ago when ebooks were fairly new to our district, and we wanted all students to be able to use those. I set up a library center. We used our library iPads. I had a center sign that explained the process, and as I was helping other students, I could look over the shoulders of the students at the center to see what gestures they were doing. You can see that in this photo. Are they able to select a book from all of the options? Are they able to turn the pages? Are they able to use the filters? I can just look over their shoulder to see if that's happening and just make a quick correction as I walk by right at the point of need. And then I also had the data from their checkouts. I could say 70 out of the 100 second grade students know how to check out a book on Overdrive. I had data, plus I had the observations firsthand of how that learning goal was progressing.
And what a simple way to do that with no extra time after school invested in those assessments. It wasn't something students filled out and you had to refer back to get that data. You had it during library class. I did something similar with one of our goals as a department is we had to have an assessment piece that was based on student data for our end of the year evaluations as teachers. We had decided we would be assessing parts of a book for young students, kindergarten and first grade. And so it was really simple. When students were engaged at library centers, I could go around to each table, and maybe I only did one table per class period, and where I would ask students, hey, you know, here's a book, or let's look at your library books. Point to the title, point to the cover, and then I could just check it off my list, and there was my data. That was all I needed.
Centers also enhance your literacy instruction with hands-on activities. So this photo is actually of an after-school book club that I ran with several other teachers, where we would use library centers as part of our book club activities. And it really made our book club much more fun and much more engaging. Another way that I used library centers to enhance my library literacy instruction was when I was teaching kindergartners about setting. I knew that the classroom teachers had already covered setting and taught it in the classroom. But when I would read a picture book to a kindergarten class and then ask them what was the setting, they just gave me blank stares. And the teacher would be so embarrassed about it and would say, I've been teaching them for 2 weeks what setting is. And they were able to repeat back to her what it was, but then they couldn't really put it into practice. So what I did was set up centers where we would read a book together, and then they would draw the setting of the book. And then I had the chance to talk to them as they were drawing about the setting and repeating the word as they were drawing. And then the next week I would have them build the setting with magnetiles. And again, we would have those conversations. What setting are you building? That setting looks great. It looks just like where the book took place, where the story happened. So those hands-on activities can really help make your instruction more effective. You will improve vocabulary of your students and increase the complexity of your student dialogue. As they are working at library centers, they'll be having different conversations than the conversations they might have in the lunchroom or at recess. They're going to be talking about coding or whatever project that they're working on. They will have a different vocabulary that's more academic. And you'll also have the chance to be walking by and prompting them with words that they might include in their discussion. That's a very natural way of helping students developing a more advanced vocabulary.
So we've talked about a couple of the reasons why and the practical benefits that you can get from library centers for both you and your students. So we want you to take a moment now to reflect on which one of those reasons or benefits really resonates with you. Which one speaks to you the most? And maybe it's a couple of them. And take a moment to write that down in your note-taking guide. And if you'd like to share it, you can put it in the comments below this video.